The veterinary clinic in Antwerp was quiet that Tuesday morning. Dr. Stefan Vermeulen had just finished his fourth autopsy of the day. All 4 birds were champions. All 4 had died within 3 months of their last race victories. All 4 showed the same pathology: small black lesions on the liver, calcium deposits in the kidneys, microscopic hemorrhaging in the lungs. 4 birds, 4 different owners, 4 different lofts across Belgium, but identical findings. This wasn't coincidence. This was pattern. Dr. Vermeulen photographed the tissue samples, labeled them, and placed them in preservative solution for further analysis. Then he did something unusual. He called the other owners whose birds he had examined over the past 6 months. Birds that had died young, champions that had collapsed mysteriously. He asked one question: in the weeks before your last races, did you give your birds any supplements or performance enhancers? Silence. Then one by one they admitted it. Yes, they had used products, not medications, they insisted. Just supplements. Legal products. Vitamins and minerals. Things they bought online or from fellow fanciers. Things with names like Racer Plus Pro, Fast Fly, Champion Boost. Things that promised better performance, faster recovery, increased stamina. Things that were killing their birds. By the end of that week, Dr. Vermeulen had contacted 28 fanciers. 32 of their birds had died in the previous year. All champions. All young between 2 and 5 years old. All died within 90 days of using these performance supplements. He collected tissue samples from every case where the owners had preserved the bodies. He sent them to a specialized toxicology laboratory in Germany. And what came back changed everything we thought we knew about modern pigeon racing. Before I tell you what they found, you need to understand something critical. This channel, Pigeon Man, exists to share truth. Not comfortable truth. Not convenient truth. Truth that may cost me sponsors, may anger federations, may make powerful people in this sport very unhappy. But truth that can save your birds' lives. Hit that subscribe button right now and become a member. Why? Because the information you're about to hear is controversial. Manufacturers of these products have legal teams. Racing organizations have reputations to protect. Fanciers who've used these products don't want to admit it. The pressure to stay silent is enormous. Members of this channel get access to the full documentation, the laboratory reports, the veterinary findings, and the legal correspondence that I cannot share publicly without risking lawsuits. This information exists. It's real. It's documented. But it's being suppressed. Your membership supports independent journalism in pigeon racing. Journalism that prioritizes bird welfare over industry profits. Also subscribe to Pigeon Healthy using the link in the description. That channel focuses specifically on natural alternatives to the synthetic products that are killing birds. We'll show you how to achieve the same performance benefits without the deadly side effects. Both channels together give you the complete picture. Do it now, because what you're about to learn will change how you think about competition, about winning, and about what price you're willing to pay for success. Now, back to those laboratory results. Back to what they found in the tissue samples from 32 dead champions. The toxicology report identified 3 compounds present in significant concentrations in liver, kidney, and lung tissue. First, a synthetic corticosteroid similar to dexamethasone. Second, a stimulant compound related to ephedrine. Third, a metabolite of an anti-inflammatory drug typically used in horses, not birds. None of these substances are natural. None are found in standard pigeon diets. None should be present in a bird's body unless they were deliberately administered. And all 3 are prohibited in racing pigeons under International Federation rules. But here's where it gets insidious. These compounds weren't being given as pure substances. They were being sold as natural supplements, with ingredient lists that read like vitamin cocktails: herbs, amino acids, minerals, electrolytes. The labels were technically accurate, listing all the natural ingredients present. But they didn't list the synthetic drugs that were also included, hidden in the formulation. Why hide them? Because these drugs are banned. If a bird tests positive for corticosteroids or stimulants, it's disqualified and the owner faces sanctions. But if the bird is given these drugs 48 to 72 hours before racing, they're metabolized enough that standard race day testing doesn't detect them. The performance benefits remain. The detection risk is minimal, and everyone pretends they're just using vitamins. It's systematic, it's widespread, and it's killing champions. Let me explain how these drugs work and why they're so dangerous. Corticosteroids are powerful anti-inflammatory drugs. They reduce swelling, suppress immune responses, and mask pain. In the short term, they can make a bird feel stronger, fly longer, and recover faster from exertion. They're sometimes used medically to treat severe inflammation or allergic reactions. But they're not meant for performance enhancement. Long-term corticosteroid use causes liver damage. The liver must metabolize these drugs, and chronic exposure overwhelms its detoxification capacity. Cells die, scar tissue forms, function declines. Those black lesions Dr. Vermeulen found, those were areas of necrotic liver tissue, dead cells that had been killed by toxic drug accumulation. Corticosteroids also cause calcium to leach from bones and deposit in soft tissues like kidneys. This creates calcification that impairs kidney function. The bird cannot filter waste products effectively. Toxins accumulate in the bloodstream. The bird becomes progressively sicker, even though outwardly it might still look okay. Stimulants like ephedrine increase heart rate, blood pressure, and metabolic rate. They make a bird feel energized and willing to push harder, but they strain the cardiovascular system. Prolonged use causes cardiac damage. The microscopic lung hemorrhaging Dr. Vermeulen found was from capillaries bursting under the pressure of elevated blood pressure during flight. Anti-inflammatory drugs, especially those designed for horses, are even more dangerous in birds. Birds metabolize drugs differently than mammals. A dose that's safe for a horse can be lethal for a pigeon. Even at supposedly adjusted doses, these drugs cause gastrointestinal bleeding, kidney failure, and liver toxicity. Individually, any one of these drugs is harmful. Combined, they're deadly, and they're being sold in products marketed as safe, natural, and beneficial. How did this happen? How did we get to a place where poisoning birds for performance advantage became normalized? It starts with competition. Pigeon racing at the highest levels involves significant money, prestige, and ego. Winning matters. Sometimes it matters too much. Fanciers who would never deliberately harm their birds convince themselves that everyone else is doing it and that they need to level the playing field. Then comes rationalization. The products are sold as supplements, not drugs. They're legal to purchase. The labels don't list prohibited substances. Surely if they were dangerous, they wouldn't be sold so openly, right? This reasoning allows people to avoid confronting what they're really doing. Finally, there's the results. Birds that receive these products often do perform better, at least initially. They race harder, recover faster, seem more energetic. This positive feedback reinforces the behavior. The fancier thinks it's working and my bird seems fine, so it must be okay. But the bird isn't fine. The bird is being damaged from the inside. And by the time symptoms appear, the damage is often irreversible. Let me tell you about specific cases. Real birds, real fanciers, real tragedies that could have been prevented. Case 1. Bolt, a 4-year-old cock owned by a Belgian fancier I'll call Mark. Bolt won 7 races in 2 seasons. He was valued at over €100,000 for breeding based on his proven genetics and performance record. Mark had been using a product called Racer Plus Pro for the final 6 races of Bolt's career. The product was recommended by another fancier at his local club who said it had changed everything for his birds. 2 months after his last race, Bolt stopped eating. His droppings became watery and dark. He lost weight rapidly despite Mark's efforts to feed him by hand. Mark took him to a veterinarian who diagnosed liver failure. They tried treatment, supportive care, vitamins, antibiotics for secondary infections. Nothing worked. Bolt died 3 weeks later. The autopsy revealed extensive liver necrosis. Nearly 70% of his liver tissue was non-functional. His kidneys showed severe calcification. His lungs had multiple areas of old hemorrhaging that had scarred. The toxicology report identified corticosteroid metabolites at concentrations 50 times higher than would result from a single medical dose. Mark was devastated, not just because he lost a valuable bird, but because he realized he had caused it. "I killed my best bird chasing one more win," he told Dr. Vermeulen. "If I had just stopped, if I had just been happy with what he'd already achieved, he'd still be alive." Case 2. Venus, a hen owned by a French fancier named Claire. Venus was from a prized bloodline, a granddaughter of a champion that had sold for €800,000 at auction. She won 4 races in her first season and was being prepared for major competitions in her second season. Claire used a product called Champion Boost, marketed specifically for hens during racing season. The advertising claimed it supported egg production while maintaining racing performance, a combination that's naturally very difficult to achieve. Claire gave Venus the product according to instructions: 1 milliliter in drinking water daily for 7 days before each race. Venus won her first race of the season, then collapsed during training 2 weeks later. She died before Claire could get her to a veterinarian. The autopsy found acute cardiac failure. Her heart tissue showed damage consistent with prolonged stimulant exposure. Chemical analysis detected ephedrine-related compounds. Claire never used another supplement. She also stopped racing entirely for 2 years. "I couldn't look at my birds without seeing Venus," she said. "I couldn't send them to races knowing I might have contributed to another death." Case 3. Thunder, a cock owned by a Dutch fancier named Henrik. Thunder was not a champion when Henrik acquired him, just a promising young bird from good bloodlines. Henrik wanted to maximize Thunder's potential, so he followed advice from online forums about supplementation and performance enhancement. He used multiple products simultaneously: an energy booster before races, a recovery formula after races, and a general performance enhancer throughout racing season. The products came from different manufacturers but had overlapping ingredients. some declared and some undeclared. Thunder won his first major race at age 2. He won 3 more races that season. He appeared healthy, energetic, and motivated. But at the start of his 3rd season, he began showing behavioral changes. He became aggressive toward other birds. His appetite fluctuated wildly. His feathers looked dull despite adequate nutrition. Henrik took him to a veterinarian who found elevated liver enzymes in blood work, an early warning sign of liver stress. They discontinued all supplements and started a detoxification protocol. But the damage was too advanced. Thunder's liver was already failing. He died 4 months later despite intensive treatment. The tragedy wasn't just Thunder's death. It was that Henrik had been documenting his supplementation protocol online, sharing it with other fanciers as a guide to unlocking genetic potential. Dozens of people had followed his advice. How many of their birds suffered similar fates? We don't know. Most people don't do autopsies. They just assume their birds died from disease or age or bad luck. These are 3 stories out of hundreds. Dr. Vermeulen estimates that in Belgium alone, several hundred champion birds die prematurely each year from supplement-related toxicity. Across Europe, the number is likely in the thousands. Worldwide, it could be tens of thousands. And this is just the deaths. What about the birds that don't die but are permanently damaged? The birds whose liver function is impaired enough that they can never race again? The birds whose kidneys are compromised so they live shorter, sicker lives than they should? The birds whose reproductive capacity is destroyed so they can't be used for breeding despite their proven genetics? Those numbers are unknowable, but they're certainly much higher than the death count. Now let me tell you about the products themselves, the specific brands that have been implicated in these deaths, the companies that manufacture them, and why they continue to be sold despite the documented harm they cause. Racer Plus Pro is manufactured by a company based in Poland. The company also makes legitimate vitamin supplements for pigeons, but Racer Plus Pro is their premium line marketed towards serious competitors. It's sold online through their website and through distributors at major races and auctions. Price €45 for a 100 milliliter bottle, enough for 50 doses for a single bird. The label lists ingredients including B vitamins, amino acids, electrolytes, and herbal extracts. It claims to be 100% natural and Federation approved, but laboratory analysis found synthetic corticosteroids present at concentrations high enough to produce pharmacological effects. The company was confronted with this evidence. They responded with legal threats against Dr. Vermeulen and claimed the corticosteroids were naturally occurring compounds found in the herbal ingredients. This is scientifically false. The specific compounds detected are synthetic and cannot occur naturally. Champion Boost is manufactured in Belgium by a company that also produces legitimate racing pigeon supplies. Champion Boost is marketed as a conditioning formula to help birds maintain peak performance. It's sold at racing pigeon supply stores across Europe and online. Price €38 for a 200 milliliter bottle. Laboratory analysis found ephedrine-related stimulants and anti-inflammatory compounds not listed on the label. When contacted, the manufacturer claimed these were processing contaminants that occurred unintentionally during production. However, the concentrations detected were far too high to be unintentional contamination. These compounds were deliberately added. Fast Fly is manufactured in the Netherlands. It's marketed specifically for long-distance races, claiming to enhance endurance and reduce recovery time. It's sold primarily through word-of-mouth and social media groups rather than through formal retail channels. Price €50 for a 50 milliliter bottle, making it the most expensive per dose. Fast Fly's label lists only proprietary herbal blend as its active ingredient, providing no specific component list. Laboratory analysis found multiple banned substances, including corticosteroids, stimulants, and an anabolic steroid. This is the most dangerous product of the 3 because it contains the widest variety of harmful compounds. All 3 companies continue operating. They've faced no legal consequences because the products are sold as supplements, not as veterinary medications, which means they're largely unregulated. They're not subject to the same testing, approval, and oversight as actual drugs. As long as they don't make explicit medical claims, they can sell almost anything. Some racing federations have issued warnings about these products. A few have added them to prohibited lists. But enforcement is minimal. Testing is expensive. Many race organizers don't have the budget or expertise to screen for these compounds. And even when testing occurs, the sophisticated fanciers know how to time the dosing to avoid detection. The result is a system where everyone knows these products exist. Many people use them, but no one wants to talk about it openly. It's pigeon racing's dirty secret. Now let me address something I know some viewers are thinking. If these products are so dangerous, why don't the birds show symptoms immediately? Why do they win races if they're being poisoned? The answer lies in understanding acute versus chronic toxicity. Acute toxicity means immediate harmful effects from a single exposure. Chronic toxicity means cumulative harmful effects from repeated exposure over time. These products are designed to avoid acute toxicity. The doses are carefully calibrated to be below the threshold for immediate symptoms. A bird given one dose might experience no obvious negative effects. It might even perform better because the drugs mask fatigue and pain, but every dose causes microscopic damage. Liver cells die, kidney tubules become scarred, blood vessel walls weaken. This damage accumulates with each exposure. After 5 doses, 10 doses, 20 doses, the cumulative damage reaches a critical threshold. Organ function can no longer be maintained. Symptoms appear suddenly even though the underlying damage was building for months. This delayed onset of symptoms is what makes these products so insidious. By the time the bird shows signs of illness, it's often too late. The damage is done, and the fancier might not even connect the illness to the supplements because weeks or months have passed since the last dose. It's like smoking. One cigarette doesn't cause lung cancer, but 20 years of smoking does. By the time the cancer is diagnosed, quitting smoking won't reverse it. The damage is permanent. These supplements work the same way. Small doses over extended periods cause damage that only becomes apparent long after exposure. Now let's talk about the psychology of why intelligent, caring fanciers get drawn into using these products despite the risks. It starts with information asymmetry. Most fanciers are not veterinarians, toxicologists, or pharmacologists. They don't have the expertise to evaluate product safety independently. They rely on trust, trusting manufacturers' claims, trusting other fanciers' testimonials, trusting that if something is sold openly, it must be safe. This trust is exploited. Products are marketed using language that sounds scientific and authoritative. They reference studies that don't exist or misrepresent research findings. They use endorsements from experts who may or may not have relevant credentials. They create an illusion of legitimacy that makes fanciers feel comfortable using them. Then there's social proof. If many people in your racing club use these products, if top fanciers recommend them, if they're sold at major events by respected vendors, they seem legitimate. Social proof is a powerful psychological force. We assume that if many people do something, it must be correct. Add in the competitive pressure. If you believe your competitors are using these products, you feel compelled to use them too just to keep up. This creates a race to the bottom where everyone takes increasing risks to match what they think others are doing, whether those others actually are doing it or not. There's also the sunk cost fallacy. Once you've invested money in these products, you want to believe they work and they're safe. Admitting you wasted money on something harmful means admitting you made a mistake. That's psychologically difficult. It's easier to rationalize continuing use than to accept the loss and stop. Finally, there's cognitive dissonance. If using these products conflicts with your self-image as someone who cares about their birds, you have to resolve that conflict. The easiest way is to convince yourself the products aren't really harmful, that the risks are exaggerated, that your birds are different or stronger, or that you're using them more carefully than others. All of these psychological factors work together to trap fanciers in patterns of behavior that, if they thought about it rationally and had complete information, they would never engage in. But humans are not purely rational. We're emotional, social creatures who make decisions based on incomplete information and psychological biases. Understanding this helps explain how the problem became so widespread. It's not because hundreds of fanciers are malicious or don't care about their birds. It's because they're human, subject to the same psychological vulnerabilities as anyone else, and they're operating in an environment designed to exploit those vulnerabilities. Now let me tell you about the aftermath of Dr. Vermeulen's findings, about what happened when he tried to bring this information to light, about the resistance he faced, and why you're only hearing about this now, years after his initial investigation. Dr. Vermeulen compiled his findings into a detailed report. He included the autopsy results, the toxicology data, the product analysis, and case histories from the affected fanciers. He submitted this report to the Belgian Pigeon Racing Federation with a recommendation that they issue warnings about these products and work to ban their sale. The Federation's response was disappointing. They thanked him for the information and said they would consider his recommendations. But weeks passed with no action. He followed up multiple times. Finally, he received a letter stating that the Federation did not have the authority to regulate supplement sales, and that individual fanciers were responsible for their own product choices. Dr. Vermeulen then approached manufacturers directly, providing them with evidence that their products contained undeclared harmful substances. 2 of the 3 companies threatened legal action, claiming his findings were defamatory and demanding he retract his statements. The 3rd company simply ignored him. He contacted veterinary journals, hoping to publish his findings so other veterinarians would be aware of the problem. 2 journals rejected the paper, saying it was too controversial and they didn't want to face potential legal challenges from manufacturers. A 3rd journal accepted it, but only after significant editing that removed brand names and softened the language to the point where the warnings were less clear. He posted information on social media and pigeon racing forums, Some posts were deleted by moderators who said they couldn't allow unsubstantiated attacks on legitimate businesses. Other posts were met with hostility from users who accused him of trying to destroy the sport or having financial interests in competing products. A few people listened, a few fanciers changed their practices, a few shared his information with others, but overall the response was silence. The racing community did not want to hear that a widespread practice was harming birds. It was too uncomfortable, too threatening to too many people's economic and competitive interests. This is why you're only learning about this now through this video, because the normal channels for disseminating this kind of information failed, because powerful interests want this information suppressed, because telling the truth about what's happening in this sport has personal and professional costs that most people are unwilling to bear. But silence protects the guilty and harms the innocent being the birds who continue to die while the problem remains unaddressed. So we're telling this story despite the risks, despite the backlash we'll likely face, because it's the right thing to do. Now let me tell you how to protect your birds, how to avoid these products, how to recognize the warning signs if you've already used them, and most importantly, how to achieve competitive performance without resorting to dangerous substances. First, avoid all products that make performance claims unless they're made by established pharmaceutical companies with full regulatory approval. If a product claims to boost energy, enhance recovery, or improve race results, and it's sold as a supplement rather than a medication, be very suspicious. Read ingredient lists carefully, but understand that ingredient lists can be deceptive or incomplete. If a product lists only vague terms like proprietary blend or herbal extract without specific components and quantities, don't use it. Legitimate products are transparent about their formulation. Research the manufacturer, look for company history, regulatory compliance, and independent quality testing. If you can't find this information easily, the company is probably not legitimate enough to trust with your bird's health. Be wary of testimonials, especially anonymous online testimonials. These are easily fabricated. Even testimonials from real people can be misleading if those people don't understand what they're actually observing. A bird that wins a race after using a product isn't proof the product is safe. It might be winning despite the product, not because of it. Question recommendations from other fanciers. Even well-meaning people can pass along bad information. Just because someone you respect uses a product doesn't mean it's safe. Ask for evidence. Ask about long-term results. Ask whether they've ever had birds develop health problems after using the product. Consult with an avian veterinarian before using any new product. A qualified vet can review the ingredients and warn you about potential risks. This costs money, but it's far cheaper than losing a champion bird to preventable toxicity. If you've already used these products, watch for warning signs. Early liver damage may present as reduced appetite, changes in droppings, darker, looser, or bloody, weight loss despite normal eating or decreased activity level. Early kidney damage may present as increased water consumption and urination. If you notice these signs, stop all supplements immediately and seek veterinary care. Blood work can detect elevated liver enzymes and kidney markers before damage becomes irreversible. Early intervention with supportive care can sometimes prevent progression to organ failure. Most importantly, understand that performance enhancement doesn't require dangerous drugs. It comes from basics, quality genetics, proper nutrition, optimal training, adequate rest, stress reduction, and excellent husbandry. These fundamentals will always outperform shortcuts that risk your bird's health. Now this is the critical moment to tell you about Pigeon Healthy's alternative approach. If you write Champion Protect in the comments below, I will share our complete natural performance support formula. This formula uses clove, turmeric, and thyme to naturally reduce inflammation, support liver function, and strengthen immune health. These are real plants with documented therapeutic properties. Clove contains eugenol, a compound with natural anti-inflammatory and analgesic effects. Turmeric contains curcumin, which supports liver detoxification and reduces oxidative stress. Thyme contains thymol, which has antimicrobial properties and supports respiratory health. Unlike synthetic drugs, these plant compounds work with the bird's natural physiology rather than overriding it. They provide support without creating dependency or causing organ damage. And they're completely legal in racing, with no detection concerns because they're simply food components. The complete protocol, including specific dosages, preparation methods, administration timing, and scientific explanation of how these herbs work at the cellular level, will be posted in a pinned comment for everyone who writes Champion Protect. Subscribe to Pigeon Healthy for access to dozens of natural performance protocols, herbal formulations, and botanical support systems that achieve results without risk. We publish new content weekly, all focused on maximizing bird health and performance using methods that are sustainable, ethical, and safe. Now let me address the elephant in the room. The question some of you are asking, if natural methods work, why isn't everyone using them? Why do the dangerous products exist if there are safe alternatives? The answer is uncomfortable but important. The dangerous products exist because they work faster and more dramatically than natural alternatives. A bird given synthetic corticosteroids will show immediate performance improvement. A bird given herbal anti-inflammatories will show gradual improvement over weeks. In a competitive environment where immediate results matter, where every race counts, where patience is rare, the fast-acting dangerous products are tempting. They promise quick fixes, they deliver visible benefits, and the long-term costs aren't apparent until much later. Natural methods require patience. They require consistency. They require faith that doing things right will eventually produce results even if those results aren't immediately obvious. Not everyone has that patience or faith, especially when they're competing against people who are using faster methods. This creates a fundamental tension in the sport. The ethical approach that prioritizes long-term bird welfare requires short-term competitive sacrifice. The unethical approach that prioritizes immediate performance gains causes long-term harm. Choosing ethics means accepting that you might lose some races you could have won using unethical methods. That's a difficult choice, but it's the right choice. Because what's the point of winning if you're killing your birds to do it? What kind of sport, what kind of community, what kind of person accepts that trade-off? Champions who maintain success over decades, who have birds that race for years rather than burning out in one season, who build dynasties of healthy, productive birds, these are the fanciers who do things right. They're not using dangerous shortcuts. They're building sustainable programs based on sound principles. Look at Leo Harriman's, still competitive in his 70s with birds from bloodlines he's maintained for 50 years. Look at Gaston van de Wouwer, winning races with birds that are 5, 6, 7 years old, ages where most birds have already retired or died. Look at any truly legendary fancier and you'll find the same pattern. Longevity, sustainability, health. These fanciers aren't winning despite refusing to use performance drugs. They're winning because they refuse to use them, because they understand that shortcuts ultimately slow you down. That the fastest path to sustained success is patient adherence to fundamental principles. You can choose that path, starting today. Starting with the next decision you make about your bird's care. Will you choose the shortcut that promises immediate results but causes long-term harm? Or will you choose the patient approach that builds something sustainable? The choice is yours, but make it consciously, with full knowledge of what each path really means. Now let me tell you about the broader implications of this problem, about what it reveals regarding the state of pigeon racing as a sport and as a community. The existence of these products and their widespread use indicates a fundamental crisis of values. Somewhere along the way, winning became more important than welfare. Performance became more important than ethics. Short-term results became more important than long-term sustainability. This didn't happen overnight. It was gradual. A slow erosion of standards, small compromises that seemed reasonable at the time. Just this once, everyone else is doing it. It's not really that harmful. I'll stop after this race season. These small rationalizations accumulated into a culture where poisoning birds for competitive advantage became normalized. And once behavior becomes normalized, it becomes very difficult to change. People defend it. They minimize the harm. They attack anyone who questions it. They circle wagons around the practice because admitting it's wrong means admitting they participated in something unethical. That's psychologically threatening. Breaking this cycle requires courage. It requires people willing to speak up even when it's uncomfortable, willing to lose friendships, lose status, lose competitive advantages to stand for principles, willing to say this is wrong even when everyone around them insists it's fine. Dr. Vermeulen showed that courage. Tom Clayson showed it. The fanciers who shared their stories for this video showed it. Now the question is, will you show it? Will you speak up when you hear other fanciers recommending these products? Will you refuse to use them even if your competitors do? Will you support organizations and businesses that prioritize bird welfare over profit? Will you make the difficult choices that align your actions with your values? These are not rhetorical questions. They're real decisions you'll face. And how you answer them will determine not just the fate of your birds but the future of this sport. If enough fanciers choose ethics, the sport survives and thrives. Birds live longer, perform better, and enjoy better lives. Fanciers can take pride in their achievements knowing they didn't compromise their principles. The community becomes healthier, more transparent, more sustainable. If too many fanciers choose shortcuts, the sport declines. Birds die young. Fanciers burn out from the cognitive dissonance of harming animals they care about. Trust erodes. The community fractures. Eventually, the sport collapses under the weight of its own corruption. That's not hyperbole, it's pattern. Every sport that has tolerated widespread doping and abuse has eventually faced reckoning. Sometimes they recover through reform. Sometimes they don't. Pigeon racing is at that inflection point now. Which direction it goes depends on individual choices. Your choices. Will you be part of the problem or part of the solution? Let me tell you what happened to some of the fanciers whose birds died from these products. How they rebuilt their lofts and their relationships with the sport after experiencing these tragedies. Mark, who lost Bolt, took 2 years away from racing completely. He kept his loft but focused only on breeding. He studied nutrition, veterinary medicine, and bird physiology. He rebuilt his knowledge base from fundamentals, questioning everything he thought he knew. When he returned to racing, his approach was completely different. Conservative, patient, focused on long-term development rather than quick results. His birds don't win as often as Bolt did during his drug-enhanced career, but they race longer, stay healthier, and retire to successful breeding careers. I'll never have another Bolt, Mark told me, but I'll also never lose another bird the way I lost him. And honestly, the wins mean more now. Every trophy represents something achieved cleanly, something I can be proud of. That wasn't true before. Claire, who lost Venus, eventually returned to racing but never with the same intensity. She races locally, in small club events where she knows the organizers personally. She refuses to participate in major competitions where she suspects supplement use is common. I realized I don't need to prove anything to anyone, she said. I know my birds are good. I know I'm a skilled fancier. I don't need validation from a system that tolerates practices I find unethical. I race for enjoyment now, not for ego. Henrik, who lost Thunder, became an activist. He created a website documenting supplement-related bird deaths. He contacts families of new cases and adds their stories to the database. He lobbies racing organizations to implement stricter testing and regulations. Someone has to push for change, he explained. If everyone who knows about this problem stays silent because it's uncomfortable, nothing improves. I can't bring Thunder back, but I can maybe prevent the next Thunder from happening to someone else. These 3 individuals represent 3 different responses to tragedy. Withdrawal, adaptation, activism. All 3 are valid. All 3 are ways of coping with grief and trying to prevent future harm. What matters is that none of them went back to using the products. None of them accepted the premise that winning requires sacrificing bird welfare. They found different ways to participate in the sport that aligned with their values. You don't have to experience tragedy to make that choice. You can choose ethics before loss forces your hand. You can decide right now, today, that you will never use products that risk your bird's health, regardless of what competitive advantages they might offer. That decision, made by enough people, changes everything. It shifts markets. It influences manufacturers. It alters community norms. It saves birds' lives. Your individual choice matters more than you realize. Now let me share specific details about how to identify these harmful products so you can avoid them. Warning signs in product marketing. Claims of dramatic performance improvement. If a product promises to transform your birds or unlock their genetic potential, be skeptical. Real supplements provide modest incremental benefits. Only drugs produce dramatic rapid changes. Vague ingredient listings. Products that list proprietary blends without specifying exact components and quantities are hiding something. Legitimate manufacturers are proud of their formulations and transparent about ingredients. Emphasis on elite competition. Products marketed specifically to serious competitors or champion fanciers are targeting the demographic most vulnerable to performance pressure decisions. This is a red flag. Testimonials from anonymous sources or from people making extraordinary claims. Won 10 races in a row or every bird arrived home are suspicious claims that should trigger skepticism, not excitement. Availability primarily through informal channels. Products sold mainly via social media, word of mouth, or at races rather than through established retail, with proper business registration and accountability or trying to avoid oversight. Resistance to questions. If asking about ingredients, testing results, or safety data triggers defensive or evasive responses, don't buy the product. Good manufacturers welcome questions and provide thorough answers. Warning signs after use. Dramatic immediate performance improvement. If a bird suddenly flies faster or recovers more quickly than normal biological capacity allows, something artificial is happening. Behavioral changes. Increased aggression, restlessness, or unusual activity levels may indicate stimulant effects. Physical changes. Changes in feather quality, eye brightness, or droppings should all be investigated. Pattern of good performance followed by decline. Birds that race well initially then show degrading performance might be experiencing